Aloha and welcome to Triple F Podcast, Faith Family First. I'm Jim Hochberg. I'm the president of Hawaii Family Advocates, but I'm also an allied attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom. And we're going to talk about ADF case that's at the Supreme Court. And let's get into it. Hey, Eva.
Hey, Jim. Welcome back. It's 2023. It's 2023. It's
I know,
year.
because you know what comes after that? Never mind.
The thing that you are never to speak. You were never.
Right.
Anyway, welcome back. I know you spent New York with your wife's family, so welcome back.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
So let me talk a little teeny bit about who's ADF, just in case somebody doesn't know.
Yes, absolutely.
So back in the mid-'90s, a bunch of the major national evangelical leaders, James Dobson, Marvin Maddox, Ron Blue, D. James Kennedy, all those big guys got together and said, you know, the body of Christ needs a legal office, a legal team across the entire country to protect them without charging legal fees because of the myriad of constitutional rights issues that have been and will continue to come up. And so they got themselves together to fund what was then called the Alliance Defense Fund. Gosh,
yes.
That's been a long time.
Yes.
And in 1995 is when they opened or whatever have you. And I got involved, I think in 97, I'm not sure. I think maybe 99, 97. I don't really remember. But what they used to do is have Christian attorneys. And of course, you have to be a serious believing Christian. You have to sign a statement of faith, which is a basic Christian, a U.S. Christianity statement of faith. You know, the Trinity, Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary, died for our sins. We're sinners. We need to be reconciled to God through him, through the resurrection and the second life after death, you know, basically church. And so back in the 90s, I first applied, and it was very interesting. I had to get a federal district court judge to write me a recommendation, and it wasn't just come on anybody that'll waste their time. It was actually quite hard. And so they would have these week-long constitutional law training sessions at different places, and I've been to a lot of them. I can't keep count. I don't know if it's already 10 or fewer. But anyway, the interesting and the reason I want to share it is I went to law school at the William S. Richardson School of Law in University of Hawaii, and you have a mandatory 2-semester constitutional law class, which I took 2 semesters in a row, Constitutional Law 1, Constitutional Law 2. And we started with the 13th and 14th Amendment at the Civil War rather than the founding and the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers and the philosophers of the 16th and 17th, 18th century that were dealing with why man is more free than a monarchy permits and all that stuff. I never heard any of that until I went to ADF things, which I also understand in most American Bar Association approved law schools, that's kind of what they do. And so if you are a law student or you're thinking about going to law school or you're a young attorney that didn't have that training, you really want to hook up with ADF.
And how
Alliance Defending Freedom is what it's now called, and get trained by them because the richness of the actual thinking that went into our way of life is amazing.
Yeah, so I want to make it clear too on a couple of things for those that are listening and viewing that. So Alliance Defending Freedom, they pay their attorneys, but the people who need the representation of the attorneys don't have to come up with the money. That's why that people need to donate to ADF, right?
Correct. So the way it works is Alliance Defending Freedom has offices in Virginia and D.C. and Scottsdale, Arizona. And I think they're in the process of moving out of Arizona, but I'm not exactly sure because they're really beefing up the East Coast stuff. And they have a staff of attorneys. They have a lot of employees. ADF's a pretty big company. It's a nonprofit. It's a charity, 501c3. And they get paid. That's their job. They go to work and they get paid. Attorneys like me, and there are, I think we're up to, I know it's more than 2,300 across the country. I think it's getting close to 2,500 private practice attorneys across the country that work with the Alliance Defending Freedom attorneys. And we don't charge and we don't get paid unless we win the case and the state that we've sued pays our fees or whatever like that. So the clients don't pay legal fees, which, some of the high profile ADF cases, Masterpiece Bakery and the florist in Seattle, and they could never have paid for the legal fees to have their rights defended. Here in Hawaii, Aloha Bed and Breakfast, that case started in 2007, and I believe it ended in 2019 before COVID. And I litigated that case. Sean Louise came in with me later into the case, all the way through working with ADF, where Sean and I did not charge the client. ADF did not charge the client. There is no way that family could have paid lawyers for all of those years. So ADF is very cool if you want to get trained on the actual constitutional legal principles that our country was founded on, or you want to get into their ambassador program. They have regional, I forget what they call them, chairman of the ambassador. The ambassadors are the supporters, the non-lawyer supporters that work on raising money and that kind of stuff. You can do that. Or you can be a client if your civil rights have been violated because your religion, because of your church, because of your family values, school-related issues, that kind of stuff.
Right. So as we're doing all these shows, we want to make sure that you all are aware that if you're experiencing discrimination because of your faith, those are the kinds of stories that Jim wants to hear about. Because, you might have a case, and Alliance Defending Freedom, once they decide that this is a case that they definitely can get involved with, then all you need to do is stay strong, right? Because
it's not easy. And we're going to talk about one of those cases today.
And I really want to get into that. But before we jump into that, how many, you don't have to name them, but how many allied attorneys are here in the state of Hawaii?
I'm not sure, because you can be an allied attorney and help with estate planning. And I wouldn't know anything about that because that isn't what I do at all for anybody, including myself. So I don't know. But I do know that Sean Louise and I have done the litigation side. I don't actually know that there are any estate planning attorneys in Hawaii, but I think there could be.
Okay. Well, okay. So walk us through this situation here, because this is going to be, well, all of the ADF cases are important, but this one is definitely a crucial one. So walk us through it. Okay.
So you kind of have to go back a long time to the cake baker in Colorado, who, if you've never seen his cakes, you need to go to the website for Masterpiece Cakes, because it's not like Liliha Bakery. These things are sculptures. They're
works of art.
Saw the pictures, it was like, you don't want to cut that to eat, because you're going to ruin an amazing piece of art.
Yeah, it's
and
phenomenal.
He's also a Christian. And so one of his regular customers, a gay couple, came in and said that because the law had changed, they wanted to get married and they wanted him to do the wedding cake. And he said, I'm really sorry, I can't do a wedding cake because I happen to have the Christian faith that believes that marriage is between a man and a woman and nothing else is marriage. So I can't do it. And even though they knew each other for a long time, they'd been customers, and he would have done any other kind of pastry for him, not a wedding cake, they sued. And actually, they didn't sue as much as the Human Rights Commission in the state of Colorado, which is kind of like our Civil Rights Commission in Hawaii.
You know what's interesting? I think that people lose that sometime when we're talking about these court cases. Like even when you think of Roe versus Wade, Alma Roe, or I think they called her Jane Roe, right? But I think it was Alma, whatever. Anyway, the woman, she was really manipulated by the attorneys that used her in that abortion case. And I think sometimes people get really angry at the people pushing these cases through, but they don't understand that sometimes these people were just they're pawns in a bigger chess game. Yeah. So anyway,
Jack Phillips, his name slipped my recollection.
I was wondering why are we silent, Jim? He was pondering his next.
So Jack Phillips struggled for years as a client of ADF, as ADF defended him against discrimination charges for years, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And when you're in court on a constitutional matter, if the court can make a ruling that does not implicate a constitutional right, they can do it on a statutory basis. They're supposed to avoid the constitutional principle and just decide the case on a non-constitutional thing. And that's what they did for him. What they decided was that the Human Rights Commission in Colorado, which is a state entity, had treated him so badly because of his faith that they couldn't prosecute him. Not whether he was allowed to be free from discrimination claims on cake making. So it's cutting the hair kind of thin. But so anyway, he won because they got punished and the charges against him got thrown out because of that violation. And then they challenged him again on a transgender cake that somebody else wanted. And so anyway, he was being defended because he was charged by the government with wrongdoing. Along comes Lori, who is a web designer in Colorado, unfortunately for her, because it's the same government entity. And she has a company. Her name's Lori Smith. Her company's 303 Creative, which isn't really that creative because 303 is the area code for Colorado.
Oh, Jim.
But anyway. Yeah, nitpick, little chihuahua. I get it. Anyway, so I just thought that's, once she explained that it was the area code, it was like, oh, okay, well, that's not, I could have thought of that.
Well, you didn't.
And I'm not that. I'm not.
You didn't.
Well, nobody asked me.
You didn't. Okay,
but creativity of artwork isn't my thing, right? So anyway, so she decided that because she was concerned before anybody complained about her turning them down, because what the law said is if you discriminate against somebody in giving them service based on their sexual orientation, or you say words in the public that would lead them to believe they would be discriminated against by you if they came and asked you for services, you violated the law. And because she was a Christian, she wanted her website to explain that she makes web design as her ministry to the Lord, and it's a huge part of what she does, and that she wants to be doing wedding website because that's like a thing, I guess. When I got married, who knew? But apparently today, you can make a whole website about your own marriage. Anyway, who wants to? Not me. But anyway, so you can. So that's what she does. And so she was concerned about getting a complaint if she lived her faith through her company. So she got in touch with ADF because everybody knew Jack Phillips and ADF in Colorado. And they decided, you know what? We're going to take your case and we're going to sue on your behalf before anybody complains to force the issue that the court didn't handle in Jack Phillips, which is what lawyers do. They try to figure out how to improve
and how brave,
the state of the law.
And when you think about it, how brave of 303 Creative to put themselves out there, because there was no complaint, which means that they were now going to announce to the world that
I'm going to violate you.
Yeah. And so now she's on their radar, which she might not have been before. So wow, pray for her, people. Pray for her.
The court that they filed in, district court in Denver, Colorado, ruled against them. And so she appealed to the Court of Appeals between her Colorado District Court and the U.S. Supreme Court, and they ruled against her. So she asked the U.S. Supreme Court to take her case. Now, I'm going to share with you the calendar of how long all this took, because that's what interests me. I don't know. It might not interest anybody else. Hang on a second. I got it in here somewhere. Here we go. September of 2016, ADF filed the lawsuit on her behalf in federal court. October of 2019, she appealed to the 10th Circuit. In July of 2021, the 10th Circuit issued a ruling against her. In September of 2021, she asked the U.S. Supreme Court to take her case. Now, what you have to know is you have an automatic right to appeal once from your trial judge to the appellate circuit court in between your trial judge and the
Only
Supreme
once.
Court. You have the right. One appeal as of a matter of right. Anything after that, it's because the court is interested in your case. And out of the, I think, 3,000 cases, or anyway, 1% of the requests of the U.S. Supreme Court are approved every year.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I can't tell you how many times people go, well, we should just ask the Supreme Court to make the decision. It's like, well, you can ask, but they only take a certain amount of cases.
They take 1%.
Yeah, so know that.
And they take cases that are not criminal cases, because a criminal case has a different standard for U.S. appeals. So a civil case, 1%, they take it if two different appellate courts in different circuits have inconsistent rulings on the same
So one
United
says
States.
yes, one says no.
Correct.
Then
they
okay.
have to. That's the best, because they have to make one
Right.
uniform for the whole
Right.
country. Or if it's something that they're interested in, and by them being interested, a majority vote yes to take the case out of 9. So September of 2021, they asked the Supreme Court. How long do you think it took the Supreme Court to answer?
A year.
Not quite. It took from September of 2021 to February, 6 months, 5 months.
Okay.
In February of 2022, they announced they would take her case. So from February to May 2022 is the lawyers writing the brief. They filed their opening brief in May. Now, this is very interesting to me. In June, a diverse group, including artists, publishers, even LGBT advocacy organizations, and legal scholars, and 20 states submitted Friends of the Court brief. They weren't
briefs.
involved in the case, but it was an issue that they asked the court to let them give their opinion on, and the court said yes. They filed Friends of the Court brief asking the court to rule in favor of Lori.
Even the LGBT groups?
According to the reporting from
Wow.
ADF. I didn't read any of the briefs.
Okay.
But that's a big deal, because it makes sense. It's like there's this new movement going on in the progressive left in the LGBT sphere on the transgender issue. A lot of them don't think transgenderism is the same for their own reasons.
And they
so
do fight. Yeah.
they are fighting together.
They're-
So
the
it
feminist
doesn't,
groups who
Correct.
normally are not with us on a lot of issues are lock in step with us on the male using female restrooms and biological males being put into prisons and stuff like that. These are it's phenomenal. Strange bedfellows, they say.
Well, yeah, you don't want to say that. So anyway, so a month ago, on December 5th, ADF had this big deal in D.C. They had a Supreme Courthouse steps rally, and they were giving speeches and all that, because on that day, Kristen Wagner, who's the current president, CEO of ADF, argued Lori's case before the U.S. Supreme Court. And the court that we have right now is the same one that did Dobbs and Kennedy and Bruin and the main funding of schools case.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have a 6 out of 9 Supreme Court that views American jurisprudence more in line with me than the ACLU. Not that they ever ask me. I'm just saying I agree with them.
Okay.
And you can watch the argument if you go to scotusblog.com. You can hear it, actually. You can't watch it.
Right.
But it's very interesting because, and we'll find out by June of 2023, their ruling. But it sounds like, and I certainly don't know.
Now, can we
I'm
talk?
speculating. It sounds like they agree that speech has to be superior to these internecine political disputes between factions that disagree on what the speech should be.
Okay, so let's talk about the goose and the gander. So my counterpart in Virginia,
and by your counterpart, you mean the Virginia policy
group. Yes. So they had booked a restaurant for I guess it was a fundraiser.
It was their Christmas fundraiser.
Yeah.
Party.
So they had booked it in advance. On the day of the event,
an hour and a half before.
Yes. On the day of the event, very, like you said, about an hour and a half before the event, the restaurant decided to cancel the reservation because
put it in the order that it happened. The serving people in the restaurant told the manager, "We don't like that group. We're not working."
Well, and the reason that they say, when you look at the other side, right? They said because the Virginia Family Foundation has been very vocal against gender identity issues, against same-sex marriage, right? So they're very vocal. So they don't like the speech they're using because they feel that it's negative speech against them. So they feel like we're going to be, for us to serve you when you have these detrimental beliefs to me, that's harmful to me. So I don't want to be forced to serve you. So
which is essentially what Jack Phillips.
Exactly. So why is one good? So why are we saying that you shouldn't force Jack to do that, but you should force this restaurant to serve them?
So I'm not saying that. And I don't know who is speaking for the Virginia Family Foundation. I don't know. But so it's kind of gone in a progression from Jack Phillips, who turned somebody down. Barronelle Stutzman in Washington Florist Shop turned somebody down that asked for service, to Lori Smith in the web design case in Colorado saying your law tells me if I turn somebody down, I'm violating the law and subject to penalties. I want to sue you. Nobody asked her to do anything. So in the florist case, in the videographer case, in the photography case, in the cake baker case, no contract was ever made, and the dispute came before the court when there was no obligation made.
And I love that you explained that, because when I asked you about this, first of all, I stand with the family, the Virginia Family Foundation. Okay, I support them 100%.
Well, you guys are a alliance
group. So I want to make it clear that people listening that I'm not trying to argue. I stand with them. I believe that they have a right to be angry, and but I like how you explained that the difference is a contract. So this particular restaurant signed a contract. And they probably gave them a
months in advance,
and maybe even a down payment,
because it's at Christmas time,
right?
So it was probably 6 months in advance, but it was it wasn't that day. They didn't call in and say, "Can we get reservation for 20?"
Right.
Okay. So they had a deal. We're going to do our fundraising Christmas party at your restaurant, which we really like, and thank you so much for saying yes.
Yeah.
Contract made.
Yeah.
The day, and they sent out their invitations. They organized whatever their party was going to be.
In fact, I think the people showed up to start setting up, which is kind of when they found out they were being booted.
And so the difference between all the other ones and this one is now, when you make a contract, do you have to comply with the contract that you made if your employees reject your contract, which is very interesting. If the court decides you're allowed to cancel your contract because your employees won't work and you can't perform it, it's an impossible contract to perform. Well, so then you have to pay damages to the other party to the contract that you violated. And so what would that be? It's not the cost of the meal. It's the inability to have the function, the embarrassment of it being canceled, the failure to do the fundraising. I mean, it's huge. So for me, just me thinking, to me, the implication is restaurants and other organizations that are in business that make contracts better think in advance before they cancel, and they better make sure their employees are well aware of whatever the decision is in advance of the cancellation of what the answer is going to be.
So let me make sure that people get your thoughts on this, okay? So say a Christian organization goes to Zippy's ahead of time, and they say, okay, we want to book Zippy's for this because we want to celebrate traditional marriage or whatever. And Zippy's, before they make a contract, they realize, oh, this is a Christian organization. I don't want them to use our facility, and they say no. So you're saying that Zippy's has a right to do that?
No, I'm not, because Zippy's is a public accommodation, and in the state of Hawaii, public accommodations are not allowed to discriminate on the basis of religion, national origin, sex, gender identity and expression. There's a handful of them, right?
So depending on state law then. So a state law
Correct.
may be in a place saying that you cannot do that. But if our state didn't have that in there.
I think every state has that.
Okay. So, all right. I want to make this.
So I'm not agreeing that it's okay. What I'm saying is it's a completely different case when you're breaching a contract that you made that they relied on so heavily that an hour and a half before you were supposed to give them their drinks, you cancel.
Well, I'm trying to push you a little further because I want people, before people go crazy and do dumb things over here, when does...
Our viewers never do dumb things.
When does a person have a right to say, you better provide this service to me?
Here's the interesting thing. We all grew up where all the stores have a sign that say we reserve the right to refuse service to anybody.
Anyone.
And that's the law, unless the basis for the refusal is one of those listed things. So people think that discrimination is always bad. But discrimination happens thousands of times a day.
It's why they don't let people come in with no shoes to an eating establishment.
Or whatever. What do you buy for cereal? You're discriminating when you pick Cheerios over all the other 500 choices.
I'm a Dr. Pepper person, so I discriminate against everybody else because I love Dr. Pepper.
So basically what we want you to do is keep your eye on Alliance Defending Freedom. Please support them financially. It's a tax-deductible charity. ADFlegal.org, or just look it up, Alliance Defending Freedom. We do civil rights, religious liberty cases without charging, and so they need the money. I can do it without charging because they do the bulk of the work, so I'm not actually going broke doing all the work, right? Pray for Lori Smith's 303 creative case that's going to be sometime around June decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. What do you think?
I think that people should stay plugged into this show because Jim and I are going to continue to talk about this kind of stuff moving forward. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and hit that notification button so that you know every time we upload a new video. Make sure you sign up at HawaiiFamilyAdvocates.com and HawaiiFamilyForum.org so that you know on specific issues that are affecting us right here in Hawaii. Make that check out to the Alliance Defending Freedom, and you can do that through ADF.org.
And you can support this show. You can sponsor it. You can support Hawaii Family Forum with a tax-deductible contribution. And I wish you would do that too. Double up your contribution in January since you made it through 2022. Help Eve out. She works really hard.
Yep. And next week, Jim and I will be talking about the legislative session that's going to be opening up very, very soon. We want to remind you what the session looks like and maybe what some of the issues are we're going to be dealing with. So stay plugged in. And in the meantime, know that we love you very much. Thanks for tuning in. And we will see you next week. Mahalo, everybody.
Happy 2023. Aloha.